I get mad of Shabbos
Welcome back to Around the Shabbos Table. I am Ahron Wohlgelernter, and I'm here with my co-host, Rabbi Wohlgelernter, a.k.a. The Father. We have a very exciting guest today, and I will give it over to my father to intro her. Before that, we are part of the Intentional Jew Podcast Network. You can find us at intentionaljew.com. Please check out all of our podcasts. I think they're all great, and I think they're all amazing. So, obviously, I'm not biased. I'm just saying I think that they're awesome. So, intentionaljew.com, and let's get around the Shabbos table.
You know, this is a very special thing for me. Today we are around the Shabbos table with a very special guest, Rebbe Lori Friedman, who, as the podcast goes through, we'll find out exactly who she is. But in our lives, she was really she and her husband were really our best friends and our only friends, really, when we first got married, and we lived together in Yerushalayim in Kiryat Yovel, which in those days, I don't know if there was a minyan Hashem or Shabbos there. I mean, it wasn't not a particularly religious neighborhood, and we lived in a Ma'on Olim, and I'm not even sure that there was a minyan of Jewish people there. You know, there was all the Russians, and we lived there together, and really literally lived there together, and you know, we couldn't have gotten closer, and then we moved to Telstone together, and we're certainly for you know, Mommy and I, you guys were a very, very important part of our lives, and really have stayed there. You know, it's never been replaced. I speak about Yaakov all the time.
Remember in the Merkaz Klita, you guys used to go down to
the basement.
Yeah,
and we
to
used
the library.
It was
incredible. Library.
It was nothing. I mean, it was nothing down there. And we sat there and we learned every night.
Old paperback books.
But I bring this up. If you listen to my shiurim, probably 1 out of 10, you'll hear this story. That one time we came down and we used to daven in shul together. We davened in the shul of old Europeans. It was like if I told you stories about that was like incredible, and the two we'd laugh at these guys, and they would they were like classic, you know, you guys that were arguing, close the window, open the window, like the classic things you see in the shul. Okay, so we would, and then we go to yeshiva. He would go off to where he went, I went off to our end, and then we came back, and at night we'd learn together. So one time after we learned. And we used to, you know, burn it up. We learned great. He said to me, "I'm having a crisis of faith today." So I looked at him and I said, "Oh, wow, a crisis of what? A crisis of faith? First of all, what do I know from a crisis of faith? I'm not even sure I knew what the word faith was. Like, you know, it's a crisis of faith." So he said to me, "Yeah, I'm having a crisis of faith." He said, "Yaakov, wait a second. We davened together this morning. You sat and learned like 8 hours today. And then we sat together tonight. Where's the crisis of faith?" He looked at me and he said, "What does one thing have to do with the other? You got a job. You got to daven. You got to learn. You got stuff to do. The faith, that's a separate thing. You crisis of faith, you deal with it." That made such an incredible impression on me, and it's really shaped a lot of the way I understand things, and it's something that I teach very often to people. Go through a crisis of faith. Just, you know, deal with your faith, deal with your emunah, deal with your issues. Just deal with them. But that has nothing to do with what you do. Continue doing what you're doing and deal with your stuff on the side. And it was really just an amazing thing. So the effect that I remember, the curry. I never knew what curry was in my life. It's curry. If I would have said the word curry to my mother, I think she would have looked it up in a dictionary. I don't know what's curry.
I tell people all the time, Yaakov was a foodie before there were foodies. And I remember one time he got me this Chinese cookbook, and I was making these steam buns, and I was thinking, I wonder if this is what they're supposed to look like. I don't know, but I'll make them. And we made all kinds of stuff. And we made Indian food, and we made Chinese food, and we made...
There wasn't nothing Hamish about the food that you made. I remember that. That was like a big thing.
But my oldest son is the same way.
Oh, really?
And he used to call my husband, okay, I see this thing they have in the shuk. They have this vegetable or they have this thing. What can I make with it? And what can I do? And the two of them, they like think up recipes and whatever. And my oldest son does all the cooking, and it's very interesting. It's always, that's a big nachas to see like all the good parts come out in your children.
Right. That's amazing. So to have, we haven't really spoken at length in a long time. We were just sitting and schmoozing a little bit, and I'm like transported back, 38 years ago, transported back. And it's just really, it's really wonderful. And when Ahron and I were talking about, having you in the podcast, he said, what should we talk about? I said, just let her talk. She's just one of the most interesting people in the world. She's had an interesting life and married to an amazing person who himself has an amazing story, and just talk.
Can you give me and the listeners just context to maybe if either just what he was, who he was, and
so just like briefly, first of all, his parents were older than my grandparents. They got married late. They only had 2 children. There's 10 and a half years between him and his brother. And his brother became they were like traditional, and his father worked on Shabbos, but his father was European. And once his father didn't have to work on Shabbos anymore, like they kept Shabbos. But his brother became through a Rav in Queens who was a Holocaust survivor. And by his bar mitzvah, he became from. And he went to Lakewood when Lakewood was very small. And my husband was 10 and a half years younger, and he became friends with all this, a very interesting crowd of people. And he went from public school to Mir Yeshiva. That was a disaster. So then he switched around every year to different yeshivas, and then he was back out the door again. And by then his brother was married and living in Toronto, and he moved to Toronto. So he was there for about 11 years, and he was a musician, and he played guitar, and he was there, and then he had a whole revelation that had to do with the Ribnitzer Rebbe also. And he met the Ribnitzer Rebbe. His brother was trying to get him to come back to Frumkeit. And he had a whole thing with him, and then he had a whole dream, a crazy dream, and he woke up and he said to his roommate, I had this crazy dream. I think we have to go to shul, it was on Shabbos. And his friend said, I also had a crazy dream. And the two of them went to shul. And they ended up both coming they decided that they got involved in JEP, which was Rabbi Saperman, and Rabbi Saperman is an amazing, amazing person.
It was also music, right? JEP, did they produce music?
I think so.
They did it. Right, correct.
Right.
Correct.
But Rabbi Saperman has a whole program of teaching Amunah in the school system. Anyway, so Rabbi Saperman said, you have to go to Israel, you have to learn. And he said, you have to go and just stay there. And he hadn't learned for 11 years, and he came to Eretz Yisrael with his friend.
It's not just that he hadn't learned in 11 years, but he had
He'd done many, many other things in his life. None of them.
It was another lifetime.
Right. And he and Huna came, and
Huna was a drummer.
Yeah, Huna was a drummer. Yeah, and he was a drummer.
Gibraltar.
No, that was Yitzchak Atias was from Gibraltar. They formed a band, and they were learning and whatever. And then I came to Eretz Yisrael, and somebody made the shidduch. So anyway, he had a very, very interesting life. I think I'm more regular, sort of. Well, yes and no. I grew up totally unaffiliated in Indiana. In Mishawaka, Indiana.
Totally regular. Totally.
Like I say to people sometimes, listen, I was in a high school of 2,000 kids and there were 7 Jewish kids. So, but we got involved in NCSY and became frum through NCSY. And then I had friends, my friends, the Stein girls, who became frum also with me. And then...
who now live in Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, they all live in Eretz Yisrael. And
in one of them in Telstone.
and so, and then at some point, like I said, okay, we need to go to seminary, and so we did. So one of the Stein girls and I came for a year of seminary, and I just loved Eretz Yisrael. It was funny because a lot of girls from that year just fell in love with Eretz Yisrael. And I said, oh, I want to come back and live here. And I went back to New York, and we were living in New York at that point. And I lived there for 5 years, and I went out with different people. And I kept saying, no, it has to be somebody that is going to be willing to live in Eretz Yisrael. And then that's when, after 5 years, I came back here for a vacation. And my friend said, if somebody makes a suggestion, you have to go out. And then that's how I ended up meeting Yaakov and going out, getting engaged. And
you got married in America?
No. I came back here and we got married here. And so, and then we just lived here ever since. Yeah. And so we were in the Merkaz Klita with you guys for like 8 months, and then we moved to Telstone, and we've been in Telstone ever since. Like the Wohlgelernters left us in the dust, but they traveled all around the world.
and now we're back.
Now you're back, Baruch Hashem. Anyway, but we've lived in Telstone all this time.
It's amazing.
I always say we, but the truth of the matter is my husband passed away 2.5 years ago.
What was he doing until he was?
So he worked for Neve for 14 years,
right.
for Neve Tzion. He was a Rebbe there. And then he went into addictions counseling, and he was a therapist. And he worked for Kesher, which was also a program. He was working as a therapist there. And then the last few years he wasn't working. He had a private practice, but it became too hard to maintain it, and he had cancer, and he was a struggle for a number of years, and he just didn't have that emotional koach to deal with clients, and so he was home.
Okay, so that sort of brings us to like what we were talking about before on the on the phone. We were saying that sort of I wanted to ask you about Shabbos and how to make Shabbos meaningful, as I like to ask all my guests, and it's connected for you very much today to the fact that your husband was nifter, and this past year and all that, and I think that I would love to just talk to that a little bit and speak to that. To throw the question at you is how do you maintain or make that meaningful for you, the Shabbos meal, Shabbos in general?
Okay, so after my husband passed away, so for a very long time, for over 6 months, I really went away every single Shabbos, mostly to my married children. At that point in time, I had 3 married children living in Eretz Yisrael, and I finally got to a point where I said, I have to have an option to be able to stay home. I can't travel anymore. I can't do it every single Shabbos. And so it was fine. Like then I worked it out. I think that that's one thing that I miss, and it's very hard. It was very hard, especially because of Corona, I feel that a home is that you have food and have people come, I miss that. I miss being able to have people come to my home, and I'm hoping now, as Baruch Hashem, Corona seems to be, I won't say over, but lessening, and things are opening up. I'm really hoping that now I will be able to have people come to me. because that's one aspect that I really do miss. But Baruch Hashem, I have good friends. I have good friends in Tellstone who have me for meals, and I in certain ways, Shabbos has become very special. Also, when towards the end of my husband's life, he was very, very sick. It was like I said, we don't even make food anymore. Like he was
at home.
He was home until the day that he was 2 days before he was nifter. We went into the hospital on Motzei Shabbos, and he was nifter on Monday. But he was very, very weak, and he could really barely eat. So I really wasn't making food for him, and how much food do I have to make for me? I really was basically not making food, and I don't know, I miss that. Even though, to tell you the truth, people say to me, oh, but that's because you love to cook. No, I really don't like to cook. And for years and years, I used to have this little paper. It was from when I was in university, and it had this little poem, and it was all about if you come, there's not necessarily going to be any food. And the last line was, I am no cook, I like to paint. And I remember I had it, and I took it with me wherever I went throughout all the years. And then I remember it was on my refrigerator in my kitchen. And one day I walked by and I go, "This is not my life," and I threw it in the garbage, because I was making food all the time, and I don't know, making food is part of making a home. It really is, and it means a lot to family. It means a lot to guests. And like you always say, around the Shabbos table, but that's the thing. You're around the Shabbos table to eat food, also.
What's something that you still make for your kids? They say we need mommies.
Oh, so what do I make? Oh, I always take food to my kids. Oh. So when I go to my son and daughter-in-law in Rehavia, I usually make sloppy joes, to take for dinner. I make all kinds of stuff, whatever I can make that will be a help, either I'll make a chicken dish, or I'll make, or an extra cake, or whatever I can make that will be a help for them. Oh, and a lot of times I take the appetizer, I take salmon, because that's a treat, or I make a lot of different dips. That sometimes I do that. Just whatever is
helpful.
Yeah,
it's so cool that also, for us, all of my siblings relate. We all have that one food that my mother made that basically she makes for us when we come. But that's our food. One brother is stuffed mushrooms. Mine is pecan pie. Another sister is mashed potatoes, and everyone has their thing that speaks to them. But I think it also speaks to the fact that there was a lot put into that food when those food were made. And when she makes it for us, then of course we're going to like it. One time she probably made it and she had us in mind. And that's why we loved it, because it wasn't about the food. It was about the food that creates that connection, the food that creates that feeling. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
We were mentioning before that a lot of people don't know how to relate to their Shabbos table. How to make the Shabbos table meaningful. So people with children don't know what to do with children. They don't know how to keep their kids engaged. People that don't have children in the house, empty nesters. So they have their challenges of making a Shabbos table.
Well, the funny thing about that is people said, oh, I don't know, it's so hard. My children are gone. I said, are you kidding? We were both going yay, yay.
But never in front of the children.
Right. No. We didn't tell them that.
Just the opposite. When they would call, say, how are you guys doing? It's really hard without you.
We were like, hooray, we're free at last. But it's different to have a couple and to be able to make that Shabbos together and to enjoy being together. And also because Shabbos is that break that's so different than the rest of the week, that you can just sit and you have that extra time to sit and schmooze and and be together, that it was just a very nice time. I feel like when you were saying this about kids, I feel like we never knew what to do. I remember one time we had a whole bunch of Neve guys, and my husband said, like, are everywhere you go, like, are all the Rebbeim's kids like this? And they said, yes, but you're the only ones who try and get them to sit at the table. like we were always trying to get them to sit down and whatever. And I mean, there were certain things that we did, like there was like a period of time in Telstone where every single Shabbos there was a Kiddush. So that meant that we'd go to the Kiddush, the kids would eat a bunch of cake and all kinds of nash. They'd come home. They wouldn't even come and sit at the table to hear Kiddush, and let alone wash and sit down. And we'd have guests, and then they would ignore, like they just run around and play. Then all afternoon they'd eat nash, and then they wouldn't eat Suda Shlishi. And I said, our kids do not have a Shabbos meal. Like it's crazy. So my husband decided we're going to make milchiks. So we, for years and years and years, had milchiks every Shabbos lunch. So when my boys
like
were...
Mishpacha Chulent.
What do they call that? Refried beans?
No, we had quiche or lasagna, or we made all kinds of things, and I made all kinds of salads, and I always made a big fruit salad, and we had this big milchik meal. And my husband used to always say, you know what, this is my favorite meal of Shabbos, is having all this milchiks. And then the kids were willing to come and eat because they always ate fruit salad. They were always willing to, And then when my boys were more like Bachram, and especially if they bring home friends, so then we'd make a cholent and we'd eat the fleshik cholent for Suda Shlishi. But many times if it was just us, we'd just eat milchiks all day, all throughout all of Shabbos day. And that was really just because of the kids, so that the kids would come to the table and they would sit down and they would eat. Once my husband passed away, all of a sudden I realized my kids, especially my married kids, their spouses are not really into milchiks. Like, I had to really go back to making fleshik lunch again when they come, like they were not really, I mean, they all the years that they came when my husband was alive, it was fine, but then...
Maybe you need to rethink this policy.
Right, exactly. But,
what's it like being a grandmother now, like when you go and to your kids, what's it like being there? What's the experience like being a grandmother at a Shabbos table? Like what's your responsibility, but also how much does it resemble your Shabbos table that you thought you didn't know what you were doing? How did that become part of your kids' lives too?
Actually, I'm so happy, like, they don't do what we did. They don't scream and yell. Like, they all try and do something special. Like my oldest son, he prepares something every week having to do with the Parsha, but he always finds some kind of interesting story. And he says, come, everybody want to hear? Like, I'm going to tell a story. And he tells like a whole story and whatever. And my son in Nachliel is Breslov. So he always reads from this also some kind of story that he reads to the kids and whatever. For me, I'll tell you the truth. What I work on very hard is to not try and discipline the kids. Like just try and enjoy them. And I always say, like, being a savta is the best because you get to take credit for them. They're mine. They're my grandchildren. But then if anything happens, then it's like, okay, they're yours. Like, here, go, take them. So it's like all the credit without any of the work. And then, of course, they're all amazing. So that also helps.
Right, we did an episode with my mother actually talking about the role of the grandparent. And that's basically what came out, that the discipline, you leave that to the parents, and you get to take the that, just enjoy them and have that time. So that's fascinating as well.
There's a whole nother part to your life which is equally as fascinating, which is your mishpacha, which is your involvement in Mishpacha Magazine. And I called Mishpacha Magazine because my Mishpacha Magazine was late, and an issue that I really wanted to read, and I called, and I understand that Rabbi Friedman is the face of the magazine as much as that she picks up the phone and everything. But I didn't know that. I just know that I see her name inside the credits on the inside of the magazine. So I called to make this silly little. It wasn't a complaint. I was just asking if I can get the magazine. I'm not mad. I just
Also, we're from La Jolla, so when we got Mishpacha Magazine, it was the Pesach from last year.
From last year. Oh yeah.
So when we were complaining after Pesach we didn't get it, we didn't get last year's Pesach one. So our expectations are not so high.
So I called and I got to the lady on the phone said to me, "Okay, what's your name and what's your address?" So I said, Jeff Wohlgelernter. And she said, "Jeff Wohlgelernter?" Okay, so that's how we reconnected.
Yeah.
But the truth is that my phone call, which was a little personal, but that phone call and thousands of other phone calls is what you see, and you come in contact with the readers and come in contact with people, and you've seen a lot there and understand a lot about, we look at Mishpacha Magazine not merely as just an interesting thing to read, but it's really a window into the Jewish world, and maybe share with us some of the things that you've experienced there and the things that you've seen, that the incredible things I'm sure that you've been able to see.
Also, what's your position there, and how does that enable you to see this? What my father's speaking about. Yeah.
Okay, so technically my title is administrator. That sounds very fancy. I'm basically the one general office person at Mishpacha. Like in the office, there's all kinds of specific departments. There's the proofreading and the editing and the graphics and the production. And then there's me. Like I deal with everybody. And so I do some part of the bookkeeping. I answer all the emails. I answer the phone, of course, and I take care of the archives. I have a lot of different things that I take care of there. So, when I was speaking to you before, one of the things that I feel is very important that Mishpacha does is that they're able to connect people to different things to help them. Like they'll run an article about a certain problem, and then I know when I read the article that people are going to want to get in touch. And also, every time that somebody gets in touch with me and asks me for information, I save the information because I know that if one person contacted me, there's going to be other people. I don't know, they've had so many different things over the years, but this is like a small example. They have this column that it's like, I forget what it's called, medical something. Anyway, it's like always some kind of medical situation where maybe the person didn't know what was going on and they went to different doctors and the doctors didn't know. And then in the end, they found out what it was. So there was one about Lyme disease and that it's from ticks. And there's a whole organization that helps out. I can't tell you how many people have contacted me for that information, like a lot of people. And then also we had a very interesting article about this man who actually lives in Telstone, who has he has some kind of company, and they find alternative uses for medication. So a lot of people contacted me for his contact information. Oh, and then just in a different kind of vein, there's this man who is like a gabbai by Rav Chaim Kanievsky. So tons of people contacted me for his information, but he has a cell phone number. You can call him, like people want to get into Rav Chaim and get a bracha, like whatever. And don't worry, like now they just had an article about Rav Gamliel. I had somebody on, there was some kind of glitch in the phone system so that they accidentally were still sending phone calls to my house number from the office. First of all, somebody called at 1 o'clock in the morning. My son was there. I didn't even hear the phone ring, but he heard it ring, and it's saved on the phone. You know, like it's one of those phones that tells you the number. So my husband saved it as Lori 1. So it said, you call from Lori 1. So my son didn't realize what it was. And he thought that maybe I'm somewhere and I'm trying to call and I need help. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. He gets up, he goes and he answers the phone. I didn't get my magazine. He's like, tote. And he hangs up. He hung up on them. He goes, Ima, somebody called at 1 o'clock in the morning because he didn't get the magazine. It, of course, was Israelis, but not American. But then this man called up in English and he starts saying to me, we had this article about Rav Gamliel and he wants to have contact information for him and whatever. And I said, the office is closed and please call after Pesach. He said, yeah, but could you just give me this information to get... I said, the office is closed. Now, he felt like he's calling the office, like he called the office number. And I was like, no. But I'm sure lots of other people are going to contact us for Rav Gamliel's phone number.
What's so fascinating about that is that I think of Mishpacha Magazine as a like just a one-sided sort of media company that they're producing, and then they get their letters edited and they print them back, and it's sort of this ecosystem. But here that you just opened that up and said, no, each article is really a world into connections. It's from the either the author or the subject to the people who need the help, and that's so fascinating and amazing.
Do you look at it that you're in a sort of like a chesed position? You know?
I think that a lot of people in Mishpacha feel that way. Like I know that, like I was just recently, I was speaking to the editor. She's a relatively young woman. She's a very thoughtful person. She's really a person with a tremendous amount of depth. And she was saying that she gets so worried about that we print something and it might hurt somebody. And she gave a whole example, and she was so upset about it. Like it was something where they wrote an article, a beautiful article about somebody who had passed away, and the almana asked them to take something out because she felt that it made it look, it didn't give the right impression. And they even edited it out, and it accidentally got put in anyway. And it was just one sentence, but the family was understandably very upset, and she just felt terrible about it. Like she said, they try so hard not to hurt people and not, like sometimes people write in also, like a lot of people have agendas. Most people have agendas. Anyway, you see that with the letters to the editor. Like somebody can read a whole article, but they like pick one sentence and they have to write this whole letter because he wrote whatever. So,
as a shul rabbi, by the way, you know that I can't relate to that. I have no idea what that means.
Like sometimes people will write in and say, how could you write about this person? And that person is really, we know terrible things about him and this and that. Why didn't you write that he's this and this? Because we don't write things like that. They don't write total lashon hara about people. Sorry, like that's not the right place.
It can't be a regular media company. It just can't be,
right.
Because we're governed by obviously by other rules, other laws, not just what's going to make the best headline.
Right.
So.
But it's incredible. We look at a magazine as a media company that's trying to make money. And and doing things. We don't realize that there are human beings. We often don't think that there are human beings behind it that have thought through issues. And I assume that there's also a rabbinical board, and there are gedolim that are consulted on things, and that we don't look at it that way. We take the average reader takes, I think, a more cynical look at it, that it's a company and it's a business and they're making business decisions as opposed to really making religious decisions, and they see themselves as providing something, not a business to make money. I mean,
Well,
it is.
believe
No, I get
me,
that.
you have to make money in order to be able to continue.
No question about it. There are definitely business decisions being made, but it's bigger than business decisions, and
Right.
and I would imagine that many people there, and yourself included, feel like you're doing avodas hakodesh. It's not, you're doing holy work, even though it's you're answering telephones and you're filing and you're doing stuff on the computer, but it's all for a purpose.
Right.
And what would you say that purpose is? How do you see, your purpose or the role of that newspaper or magazine?
I feel that Mishpacha tries to be some kind of a source of help for the Frum community in different ways. That's also why they approach a lot of different issues that sometimes people have problems with, that they feel that it's not something that you should really talk about, but they feel these issues are issues that need to come up because it's something to help the Frum community. And as I said before, like, it's a very wide readership, and so they're always balancing, like
Just bouncing off each side. We do this, we're going to upset this.
Right. It's trying to balance it so that the majority of the people will be happy. Like, there's always going to be somebody who's like not so happy. Maybe it's on one end or on the other end.
Who are some of the people that you got to meet through this job and got to build relationships with through this job that are meaningful?
Well, one person who happens to be a very special person is Yisrael Besser. I'll never forget when there were a number of times over the years where they brought him to Israel, and they brought some of the Rabbanim to Israel, and they had a lot of meetings and stuff. And I remember one time he was sitting at this meeting and he was like, if I could sit so long, I would have stayed in yeshiva, but he's an amazing writer, and he's a person who's he's involved on a lot of different levels within Mishpacha. And I think he's just a very special person. And I think he's an amazing writer, but he's also a very special person.
He's not based out of here. He's out of the U.S.
No, he lives in Canada, actually.
Okay.
I mean, there's other people who I met just because they came. I don't really meet all the writers face to face, but because I work on the bookkeeping to a certain extent, I'm in touch with a lot of the writers. So some of them I have a relationship with, some not so much, like I'm just sending them their itemization of their payment every month. But some of them, it's really special. They're like, for example, there's a writer, she's also from Canada, Machla Abramovich. She's written a number of different things relating to the Holocaust, and she came. I was very excited to get to meet her first, face to face. Like it's very nice when they come and we get to meet them. We also had, this was very interesting. There's a woman who's a reader. She writes very intelligent, well-written letters to the editor. She lives in California, and she loves Mishpacha. So when she wrote to us and said, my husband and I are coming to Israel. This is before Corona. She said, and my dream is to visit Mishpacha. And they came, and it was really fun. Oh, also another person who's a very, very special person who unfortunately is not so well and hasn't been writing so much is Rav Grilak. Now he's like a whole nother generation. He's like Rav, like Rav Lau, like they came as children. They were in Europe as children during the Holocaust, and then they came here to Eretz Yisrael. And he just has a very wide view of things. He really does. Like they don't make them like that anymore. And so that's, and he used to come into the office on a regular basis. So, and there were different times, like one time, a non-Jewish reporter came from some Scandinavian country, and she wanted to interview him. Now, he doesn't really speak English. he understands English.
He writes in English, or that's
No.
translated?
No, it's translated.
Fascinating.
So he didn't feel comfortable at all to speak in English, and his understanding of spoken English is limited also. So I sat in with them and I translated back and forth for them. So that was also very interesting. But I always was very interested to hear what he had to say about different situations and whatever, because he just has a unique view on things. And unfortunately, he's not so well. So, I mean, he's not writing as much now. Right. He's in his 80s, so and he has certain health issues which he's dealing with. But they made they always make some kind of they call it haramat kosit, like a party before the Yom Tovim in the fall, and then also before Pesach. Now, we haven't made it now in over a year because of Corona, so they did have one before Pesach, and he came, and everybody was so excited.
It's like a holiday party.
Yeah.
Like in America.
Yeah. But it's very fun.
But no shilas of can you give Xmas presents, like less shilas.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe more because it's full of from Jews. But what's the office like? I'm super curious about that. What is, how many people are working there in the office in Israel? Where does the magazine get printed? Where does it, and have things changed really through Corona, just through everyone being more available online, and has the production changed at all?
Well, they really, like last March, right after Purim, they sent everybody home and set up everybody from their computers from home. And I worked at home for 7 months. And then finally, and they had the office. There's actually the office that we're in right now has 3 outside doors. So they divided the office into 3 different parts. They put up big plastic sheets, and so they divided it up so that because they didn't want that if somebody will get corona and a whole entire section is out. So even when they did bring people back, they started bringing people back. They had everybody coming in on different shifts and whatever. I didn't come back. Really, people came back already Shavuos time last year. I didn't come back until the fall, until they took down those barriers, because I sit in a different section than the English magazine. I said, if I have to sit and send them emails, I'll do it from my living room. I'm not going into the office to sit and send emails back and forth to people. They were really trying to be very careful, and and I mean, the good thing is that it made everything more flexible. Like, people now do have that option to work remotely. But the office, to tell you the truth, how many people are there? Maybe for the English magazine, I want to say 40, but I don't think there's that many. I think it's less than that. Like, we have the proofreading room, so there's like at any given time there's 3 to 4 proofreaders there. Then they have the graphics is also like 4 people. There's 2 people in production. There's different editors come in and out, and a few more people, and then the people from subscriptions and me. That's about it. It's relatively small. For many, many years, the entire production of the magazine was here, and they used to print it here, and they used to fly in the magazines to America for many, many years. Wow. Then finally we had somebody who came into Mishpacha for about a year, and he went to America and he negotiated and he arranged to have it printed there. Because many years ago, there was, when they realized that they're vulnerable, there was a volcano went off in Iceland or something, and there was a tremendous amount of ash, and they couldn't fly, and they were.
That's why I didn't get my Yeshret.
And they worked out something, but it was really very pressured, and it just became. They used to think that it was cheaper to do what they were doing, but it became like, why are we doing this? Like, when we can just send the files. And so somebody went and he set up with a printer in America to have it printed there. And the American issue is printed there, but the one that goes all around the world, either Israel, Europe, England, whatever, is printed in Israel. And now I think also in South Africa, because those people are really like, get it 2 weeks late every single week,
So they started printing there as well.
Yeah, I think they started printing in South Africa also. They have somebody who prints. But somebody told me it's only in black and white. It's like a bookstore or something, and they print it out for everybody. So during Corona also, it was very hard in terms of there were certain places in Europe that for many months they weren't able to send the printed edition. They had to send they were sending a link online that you could go online. I don't know how that worked because most people read it on Shabbos. So I think they had to just print out whatever articles they wanted to read. Yeah. So, but Baruch Hashem, they were really through thick and thin. Mishpacha Magazine came out every single week. So, and like they keep saying, like, it's really pretty amazing that they made a giant issue in, Sukkot time, and they made a giant issue now. And,
are those the craziest times at the office before Pesach and before?
Insane.
I mean, the thing itself, it's a book.
Yeah.
That is a massive magazine for Pesach. So
yeah. So they work literally day and night. Because I don't work directly on the magazine itself. My work is after it actually is printed, because then I have to put all those pages into the bookkeeping. So I'm very busy right after Pesach, but they're working away, it's very pressured. And then afterwards, it calms down. There are things that they can do ahead of time. Like they can do the calligraphy, for example, the story supplement. They can do that ahead of time. But they were saying like I was showing them, there was I always find the typos and stuff, and I went and I said, look, what do you see that's wrong? Anyway, so they were like, you don't understand, we did that supplement in one day. They put it all together, and I don't know, there was some amount of craziness there, but Baruch Hashem, they managed to do it. I don't even know how they come up with the ideas every time to do a different kind of supplement, but
do you see it as like an art form at all? The at least the writing, or maybe just the production of it, the putting together of a magazine.
Yeah, and I think that they like the graphics department. I know they take it very seriously. They're always redesigning, and sometimes it's a little too much designing. But okay, there was one point in time, and they made the index was all pictures. I said, listen, I don't want to read an article that's a picture of a pineapple. Can you put some words in too? Not just the picture of the pineapple. What does the pineapple mean? So that was a very short-lived kind of thing. But they did put a lot more pictures into the index than it used to be. It used to be all writing. So they're always thinking up new things and doing new things and doing new covers and new ideas for covers. And actually the art director, the head of the graphics, is an old Neve guy. Yeah. So, and he's very talented, and he, very good at what he does. And
everybody's got a job. Hopefully, everybody has a job. And is employed and doing the things. What is most gratifying for you in being able to work at Mishpacha Magazine?
I think it's probably just working with the people there. The people in the English Mishpacha are really nice people. I for over 10 years, I worked 9 hours a day. So I was there a lot. And they're just really, really nice people and very interesting people. And like, we talk about all kinds of things, like, and like I'll go and and one of the editors will say, oh, you have to read this book. It's really, really an amazing book. And I just read, whatever, like, and they're my friends. Like I really care about them, and we go to each other's simchas and whatever. Like it's a mishpacha. Like they do sort of like, it's not. Listen, it is a business. From the top, there are certain things that I would say are not so mishpacha-like, but certainly the people there all care about each other and are, and beyond just like, they're people you work with.
That another thing speaks to like the business versus chesed. I think speaks to this. It's this interesting thing like I'm grappling with, but the how to balance that. Because on the one side you're doing chesed, but chesed sometimes interferes with the business, and the business could interfere with that. But that you're saying that it's at the end of the day, it's a mishpacha and it's a family, and gives off that feeling. I think that's pretty much a success. If your employees are happy, and feeling that they're part of something important, then that's a success on that side. So that's amazing. And how have you seen it? You've been there for 13 years, correct? Mm-hmm. So how have you seen it change? And maybe over the next 10 years, where do you see it? Do you see it changing? And I ask you this not as an editor, but I ask you this because you sort of have like that, a little bit of a wider view on what's going on there, because you're seeing it from the desk, from the office. So,
listen, the magazine's grown. It's like I was just saying to one of the graphic artists the other day, I said, listen, it used to be that Family First, on an average week, it was 48 pages. Now, and then it became 64 pages. Now it's probably somewhere between 72 to 80 pages. That's like on an average week, like when it's not something special. And the special issues have become bigger and bigger and bigger. Like the issue the week before Pesach was, the main magazine was over 150 pages. Like the magazine itself has just grown and grown. And I see also, like I said, they're always trying to improve. They're always thinking of like, now we're going to do a new layout, a new this, a new that, like, and they have changed. Like when you look back at because I deal with the archives. When you look back at the old issues, they don't look anything like what they are now. Like they've like. And I think it's become very, very professional and, really.
It wasn't necessarily in the beginning or as much?
Not as much. It was
cool.
It was totally different, totally different. Well, really, the English magazine, when it started, was this one woman who she now is the director of the website. It was her and a graphic artist, and they were basically just doing translations from the Hebrew magazine. They would do translations, and then they had a graphic artist do the graphics for it, and this woman would set it all up and whatever. That was basically the English magazine when it started, and then it grew from there. The woman who's now the editor of the main magazine, Lori Friedman. She was a translator. That's how she started.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, she was one of the translators who translated articles, and then she moved up. I think it's grown and grown. And when I came 13 years ago, one of the things I was told then was, listen, the English magazine is really the orphan child of Mishpacha. Like the Hebrew is the main magazine, and then there's the English. That's not true anymore. Like the English magazine is very much, it's in its own right, like a magazine and a certain koach and whatever. Like it's changed a lot.
That's fascinating. It's such an interesting, like, just point of view you have that you see that. I find that fascinating. My mother showed me on your that you very active. You're an influencer on on Instagram as well. No, that's a joke. But you definitely have some beautiful art that you put up there. And when I mentioned it, you had this sort of like understanding of different types of things that you paint. So what's your favorite things to paint? This is obviously on the side, right?
Right.
So what is it to you, and what are your favorite things to paint?
I started, first of all, I really did artwork since I was a kid. I took art. I did art. I majored in art when I was in college. And then for many years I did calligraphy and watercolors. I did ketubot and birkat bait and things like that. Then a number of years ago, like about, say, I think 11, 12 years ago, my daughter was taking an art class, like an extracurricular art class in Tellstone. There's a woman who's an artist, and she had a studio, and she was giving classes. And my daughter, who's very talented, it was a very hard time in her life, and it was really good for her. And she's really talented. So then when I started working for Mishpacha, and I was working so many hours, and I said, you know what? I feel like I go to work, come home, make dinner, go to bed, get up, go to work. I have to have something else. And while my kids were growing up, I did a little bit of artwork here and there, like a little bit of sketching, and I did ketubot here and there. Once I started working for Mishpacha, I really didn't have time to do things that were like time, or like I had a time frame. But I said I really need some other outlet, and even though I was really working a lot of hours, I said I need this. I need something else, and I started going to this art chug also, and I went for years, and so what do I enjoy? What I really I sort of like keep my eye open all the time for things to paint, and something that catches my eye. Like I really like some kind of a moment. I do people, and I do also landscapes. So I used to, like, especially when I went to the chug, I used to like do one painting of a landscape, and then the next one I do a person, and then the next one I do a landscape. Like I usually switched it off. So like I said, I'm always keeping my eyes open for something that pulls me, that I feel like, oh, I really want to paint that. Like, and I've gotten a number of things through Mishpacha, actually, because I've done a couple paintings. Somebody sent in a picture. She was just sending it in, like, to be in, like, one of these photo things, they used to have in the circle or something. They used to have this thing where they printed people's photos and whatever. She sent in this photo of, like, all these little boys sitting with their Hasidic fathers at some kind of tish. I mean, it obviously wasn't on Shabbos because it was a photo. And I just loved it. And I wrote to her and I said, I want to paint this. And I did. I did a painting of it. And another time somebody sent a picture of Rav Chaim putting his talis on at a bris. And I just love the photo, and I did a painting of that.
That's even on your Instagram.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
On my, so that was from that. That was really from that. Then in the past,
was that a moment, or that because
for me it's a moment.
Like, yeah, because it's a little bit of a portrait, but it was, if you look at that picture, I'll put it in the show notes so that anyone could go and see it. But it also there's something so real about. You caught something. There's something there. Well,
that's what really pulled me. And so I used to always say about portraits, the problem with a portrait is what the first thing everybody says is, does it look like him? Does it look like him? Oh, you think it really looks like him? Like that's the main thing. And I actually am able to do that. But I felt like I really wanted to do something beyond that. However, it's sort of the way life goes. I did a portrait. Somebody asked me to do a portrait of Rabbi Friedlander, Alav Shalom. He was our Rav, and he was also this man's Rav. And this man, David Kahana, was my husband's chavrusa for a while, and he's an old Neve guy. And he has helped me tremendously. Like, after I did this portrait of Lori Friedlander, he got people to order portraits from me. So, and it's interesting because I did one time. Usually people send me a photograph of what they want done. So sometimes I know the people, sometimes I don't. Somebody wanted Rav Zweig from Florida. And I was like, but they didn't send me a picture. So I said, send me a picture. And then I went online and I say, oh, look, Mishpacha Magazine.
I was going to say he's on Mishpacha Magazine. Yeah.
They did it. Look, 3 years ago, they did an article. Now, I have access to all the files. So I went into the photo files and they had like a beautiful, like they did a whole photo shoot of him. So I sent all these different photos to the guy and I said, which one do you pick? And he picked one of them, like, which was the one that I really liked, which was, it was a picture of Rav Zweig. He was talking and he had his hand up and he was talking.
Again, just totally captured him, the complexity and what you could almost see what he was saying in that picture. Like, just feel it, that he was saying something deep and he was saying something real.
So I was very excited because it wasn't just a portrait. It was really him talking and him. So whatever. So then, and I've done different things. And I was telling you, like I did the Chafetz Chaim. So I did it. I was also very excited about that to do that. It was from the video that they found this
the real picture of the Chafetz Chaim.
Yeah, the real picture of the Chafetz Chaim, and I worked very like also with that kind of a picture, you really want it to come out right. Like you want it to look like him. But like I was telling you, that it's like it was very important to me that certain aspects of the Chafetz Chaim I was really trying to portray beyond just a picture of him. Like the fact that he was a very kind person. I mean, he was a gadol, but he was a very determined person, a person who accomplished tremendous amount of things in his life because he was so determined. Like even when he was a very elderly man, he was still going around and speaking to communities and trying to get to them to do things issues that he felt were really important. He was still going around and speaking. And, but he also was very kind. There's so many stories of his kindness and how kind he was to people on a personal level. So I was really trying to portray that in the picture also.
So your art isn't really any different than a writer, because a writer tries to do exactly the same thing. When they write, they want to really capture the person.
Right.
And when you're doing your art, you're not merely drawing a picture. You're trying to capture a person in a moment, like you say.
So it's very interesting when I do somebody that I have no idea, I don't know them, because I don't really know who they are. But it's a very interesting thing because I found that as I work on the portrait, I could even be wrong, but I feel like I get to know the person. Like do you
like read up on them, and do you have to do any research before you do it?
No, because I don't always have that option, because it might be somebody personal. It might be somebody from their family. There's a few that I have no idea. Like the latest one that I did, I have no idea who this is. I really don't know who it is. And it was a very strange photograph. It was a photograph that was behind, he must have been behind a window, like he's looking in. The light is all from behind his head. It's a very interesting picture altogether. And they said, do you think you can do it? So I said, yeah. Okay. Like, even if I doubt myself, which I do, like the hardest thing for me doing these portraits is like just to talk myself into starting. Because part of me knows that I can really do it. And then part of me is saying, oh my gosh, how are you? But maybe this time you won't be able to do it. Maybe this time it won't work. Maybe it won't come out. And then I had to like just work on myself, And then once I start, it goes. Like, but that was a very interesting photograph. But it really did come out. I was very happy with the results,
And who knew the person?
They were very happy.
Cool.
Yeah. So that was
if somebody wants to see and maybe even get you to maybe commission something for you, how can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram at Lori Friedman. And they can always contact me through that, I guess.
Amazing.
If we're not careful, we are literally going to be around the Shabbos day.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you very much. So that's it.
Okay.
There you go.
That's awesome.